Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. We have a great show tonight. My guest is Brian Tyras, and he is going to share with us his terrifying encounter in the woods with Dogman. So let me bring on Bruce. Hey, Brian. Thanks for joining us
Hi, how are you?
tonight. I'm
Hi,
so
thank you.
happy. Yeah. Hey, Brian, Brian is an Ohio researcher, but would you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself before we start the show?
Sure. I'm recently retired from the medical field of 4 months shy of 35 years, or 36 years, I mean. Live in a very small town in Ohio, and ever since the encounter, I have researched these things to the fullest I can. So,
Are you still researching it?
oh yeah, all the time.
Really? Okay, so
Yeah.
for those who aren't too familiar with Dogman, there Dogman has been around for years, and the first sighting was alleged appearance in 1887 in Wexford County in Michigan. So, Brian, do you want to start your story?
Sure. Uh, um, my encounter, it's a two-part encounter actually. The It started in December 2005. It was the first or second week of December. Uh, Cold, of course. Um, a light dusting of snow, not much. We were in bed sleeping. It was late. It was after midnight, and on the back of our bedroom, there was a set of French doors that walked outside. Anyway, I kept hearing a thunk about every 20 seconds or so. I kept hearing this thunk sound. Um, so I got up and I looked out the French door, the back French doors, and I have a very large dog, and he was outside. Now this particular breed of dog, um, he's a hybrid. He was a wolf Malamute,
Oh, I used
and
to have.
he was beautiful, but loved the cold. They need to be outside. That's just the way this dog is. So I was watching him, and he was pacing back and forth, and he was tugging on his chain. So I'm like, that was bizarre. That's not him. So I got dressed and I grabbed my 45 and I went outside with my flashlight, and my 45. So uh, when I got to him, and as I said, this is a very small, very rural town, less than 150 people, middle of nowhere. There's no stop signs in town. It's a straight drive through. There's no stoplights, no stores of any kind, nothing. So anyway, I went out to see him, and he was pacing, and his head was down, his tail was down, but the hair on the hair on his back and his hackles standing straight up. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, this was just not him. His name was Wolf, of course. And I'm like, Wolf, what is going on? And that's when I heard the sound, and it was this resonant howl, unlike anything I had ever heard. And it immediately caught my attention, and he was pacing. So about 20 seconds later, same thing, same howl. So now I'm like, well, I've got to go find out what this is. So I went back up to the house, grabbed my big spotlight, and I started out. And what I had thought it was the town was putting in new culverts, and it sounded like a dog stuck inside this culvert, like a barrel almost.
Oh,
That reticent sound is what it sounded like. Well, when I started walking toward where I thought the sound was coming from, it was probably 700-800 yards away to the north of me, and as I got closer, the sound wasn't coming from where the culvert was at. it was coming from straight ahead of me back in the woods. So I get to this hillside, and the hill would go down and it would cross a small road, and then it would go back across this person's yard, and there was woods, and it was coming from there. Well, I looked down at the 45 in my hand, and I thought, no, this isn't going to do it. So I went back home pretty quick, and I got in my gun cabinet, and I pulled out a HK91, grabbed the magazine, and my wife, my then wife at the time, she wondered what was going on. So I told her. Now, she was born and raised in the city, and a large, and her living out in this rural area was something new for her. And she walked out following me, like, what are you doing? Why do you have to go back there? I said, there's something not right. And she heard this thing howl, and she literally stepped back against the house and kind of like slid down. And she said, oh my God, what is that? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm going to go find out. So I went on my way, and I went back to where the sound was coming from. And I had my spotlight and my rifle, and I went down the hill, and I stepped over the ditch line into the neighbor's yard. We say everybody here is neighbor, even if they're 800 yards away, they're a neighbor. And when I had first got to the hillside and I was looking down at their yard, when I was looking to see where the noise was coming from, the owner, he had 3 dogs, and they were hunting dogs, and they were more toward the side in front of his house, and they had barrel houses. And these things, 2 of them were in their barrels because they were facing toward the hillside. They were shaking. They were terrified. And the first one, was trying to dig through frozen ground to get under his house. And that was one of the other things that made me turn around and go back and get something else. So anyway, I walked down this hill, and I stepped over the ditch line, and I walked past his dogs. And I'm shining the spotlight into the woods, and I couldn't see anything. And then all of a sudden, I hear something coming through the woods, just crashing through the woods. Well, I slammed the bolt shut on this HK91. It's a battle rifle. It's a very heavy bolt. When those things shut, they make a very loud noise. I had night vision, first gen night vision on top of this thing. And I still had my spotlight. So I had the spotlight in my left hand, and I had propped up the rifle with my right hand when I slammed the bolt, and it stopped when it heard the bolt close. So I'm standing there shining this light into these woods, and there was a pine tree. Not a very, it wasn't huge. It was a nice sized pine tree. And I could see this thing, and I'm trying to wrap my head around what I'm looking at. This thing was about 7 feet tall, and it had its hands up on the limb, was pushing the branch down, and it was staring right at me. Well, I'm looking at it, and he's looking at me, and I could see him breathe, or it breathe, him, her, it was breathing. You could see the steam coming out of its muzzle. You could see its chest moving, and I'm like, I'm trying to understand what it is I'm looking at. There's no time to be afraid because you're standing there staring at this thing. It's staring at me. I'm staring at it. And this went on for probably about 30 seconds, 20 to 30 seconds. And it turned to the west, and it ran. And it ran about 150 yards, and the last part of that was straight uphill to the road. I counted to 5 when it hit the road. It was gone. I'd never seen or heard anything move so fast in my life. At the time, the only thing that I could the only thing that I could compare what I was hearing, that howl, to was, if anybody's watched The American Werewolf in London, when they're on the moors and that kind of Renaissance howl, at the time, that's the only thing that would come close to what I was hearing.
Can I ask
Now,
you a question?
of course,
When you were having the stare down, was there any odor coming from him?
I didn't notice any. I, I was like I was probably between 30 and 40 yards away from it,
No smell?
and it was, I I didn't smell anything. I didn't smell anything. I don't remember smelling anything. Um, if there was, it's something that I was too busy staring at something that shouldn't exist.
What
You
color
know, I
his
wasn't
eyes? What color are the
red.
eyes?
Red. They were like an amberish reddish color. They were more red when I hit it with the spotlight. And I mean, I didn't even have time to. I didn't look through the scope of my rifle. I was just staring at it with the spotlight.
How did you feel
And
when you saw him? Did you have any fear? Did you feel
no, there was no
threatened?
time to be a. No, I felt it felt evil,
Uh-huh.
malevolent.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but there was no time to be afraid. It's because you're looking at this thing trying to determine what it is. Your mind's trying to gather as much information while you're looking at this thing to say, what is this? Because this shouldn't exist. Um, and when I said it was 2-part, about a month later, it was mid-January of '06. We were supposed to have a large snowstorm come in, and they said, possible ice storm, mixed with snow. And I went out and I moved Wolf inside the big garage, and made sure he was bedded down well. It was a Friday night, so Saturday morning I woke up and the storm had passed and the sun was out, and we had got about maybe 8 inches of snow. And I walked out. I was going to go walk out and get him, take him outside, let him run in the snow because he loved doing that. And I stepped out, and as I started walking toward the garage, I'm looking at the side, and the snow was all like packed down next to the garage, like there was something that had been walking in the snow. And I'm looking at that thinking, that's strange. And as I started approaching the garage, I stopped and I looked down, and there was these tracks in the snow. And I just stopped. And my oldest daughter and son, they had came out, and he's looking at it. And I went and got my next door neighbor, he's probably uh, almost 12 years older than me and an outdoorsman himself. And he came over and he was looking at it, and Gary, I'm like, have you ever seen anything like this? And he goes, no. So I belong to a local sportsman's club that's here in town. It's very, like I said, it's a small town, and there's woods everywhere. And in any direction I walk 5 minutes from my home, I can be in the woods. And an officer from the ODNR had come out and had a talk at our club the past week, and he handed out cards with his name on it. So I called this number, and he happened to be in another town that was about 7.5 miles away. Said he and I talked quite a bit after that meeting. So he came out, and he was looking at these, and he goes, "This is nothing I've ever seen." Now, if you've had an opportunity to watch the Dogman. Seth Breed loves small town monsters. He's a very good researcher. He's does a lot with um, Bigfoot. He's had other cryptids on there, but he did one on the Dogman Triangle. And in the beginning of his movie, they were talking about animals in Texas and this and that and the other, and there was actually a set of footprints, like what they consider Dogman tracks, or what they portrayed as. Honestly, they weren't too far off of what these tracks were. So the old DNR guy, he was taking pictures of it. I was taking pictures of it, and we walked. And what was interesting about these tracks? Now they were standing still. It was standing because they were two tracks, like side by side. Maybe 2.5, 3 foot apart where it stopped. But what was interesting about the tracks was when it turned and ran back toward the railroad tracks, they were 8 feet apart, like it hopped, like it just bounded. 8 feet apart, bipedal tracks, boom, 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 right up to the railroad tracks. My son and I went and got my son, who later on became a Marine, and he and I tracked this thing about a mile down the railroad tracks, and we were where it had ran down the track, and then in the middle, there's snow, and then sometimes the snow was blown. But after about a mile, we lost it. I couldn't find out where anything that could hop that far. It could have hopped off the side, and there's some pretty steep embankments that run up and down these tracks. But that thing had scented me and came to my home.
Wait a minute.
Now,
Okay, I heard. Now, he was sniffing you. Was he sniffing you?
no, he that night in that first thing. Whoops, there we go. That night, that first encounter, when we had this, when we were staring at each other, he must have picked up my scent. And maybe he felt that I was something unusual. I don't know. I wasn't afraid, but only thing I can think of is he caught my scent, and he was back at where I lived, outside, not 5 yards from my back door. And this encounter is something that you don't take lightly. It was, as I said, something like I had never seen, and it's something that would creep into your thoughts on a daily basis when you live in the same town. You pass by the spot where you've seen it. Walking outside the door, I moved away from the house that was there, and it's probably 100 yards away. But it's something that you never forget.
Uh,
Um,
when he was standing outside your house, he was just standing there. You were inside and he was outside and you were
it,
just,
it happened during the night. I didn't know it was there.
oh,
It happened. It had to have happened during the night, during the storm, because when I got up the next morning to go out and let the dog out, let it run through the snow, because we had a snowstorm, about 8 inches of snow. That's when I found the tracks. It must have happened. I don't know what time the snow stopped. I have no idea. I wish I knew, um, because the tracks were deep in the snow. I mean, you could see them. They were, like I said, when it was standing still, it was, they were maybe 2.5 feet apart, like a person would stand. And then when it turned and it stepped, and then you could see the bounding tracks. And that bounded for, let's see, the house was probably 60 yards or so from the railroad tracks. And, they were just about every 8 feet apart. And they were bipedal. There was one and then another and then another. And right up the bank to the railroad tracks, and that's where and then we started tracking from there. Now, I have seen bear and mountain lions and bobcats in the wild. I've heard them scream. Um, I've seen them move. I've seen coyotes, wolf in the wild. I have none of those things came close to what I saw. You know, when you think Dogman, it looked like it did. It looked like uh, for better purposes, Hollywood werewolf. You know, that's what it looked like. You know, about 7 feet tall. It was massive. I didn't see I wasn't looking at its lower half. You know, I couldn't tell you if it had a tail or not. I was too busy watching its chest go in and out and watching the steam come out from its muzzle. That its mouth was open, nice big sharp teeth, and watching it breathe and look at me. And it was just staring at me, and I was staring at it. And it's something that you just never forget. Um, my my youngest son and my girlfriend, this past July, both had an encounter. I wasn't with my girlfriend when she had it, and I was with my youngest son, and we were fishing. And this was at the Sportsman's Club, and we were behind a 6-foot chain link fence. It's chained off, and he was standing on a dock that was facing south. I was standing on the side of the pond that was facing west. This was the end of July, so it was maybe about 8:30ish. Plenty of daylight. It wasn't dark. And what lies in front of this sportsman's clubs are soybean fields. And there's 2 soybean fields, and they're very large soybean fields, and they're separated by a tree lawn, a fence row, a tree fence row. And I was reeling in. He was standing on the dock, and I heard a sound behind me, and I looked over at him. Well, he had jumped off the dock and ran to me, and he's going, Dad, did you see it? I said, I see what? I said, did you catch something? And he goes, no. Did you hear that noise? I said, yeah, I heard it, but I didn't have time to turn around and look. I'm trying to reel in to recast. He goes, Dad, I saw this thing. I said, wait. What did you see? He goes, this thing was huge. He goes, it was kind of running on all fours. He said, but it was so fast. He goes, it was faster than anything I've ever seen. He goes, it was there, then it was there, and then it was at the woods over there on the other side of the driveway. And he goes, it only took just a couple seconds to get there. Now, I grilled him. I said, was it a deer? I said, you probably saw a deer. He goes, it was not a deer. He goes, this thing was huge, Dad. And he goes, it looked like a giant German shepherd. He goes, it's what it looked like. And he goes, it was running, he said, like on all fours, but he said the front ones, he said it was almost like it wasn't touching the ground with its front ones. He was hunched over running. And he goes, it was just huge, and it was so fast. He said it covered that ground in just seconds. And he was terrified. And I went over to the woods where and usually I carry a firearm, and that particular time I was not. I walked over to the wood line where he saw it disappear into, but I didn't see it. We haven't had much rain here. We're almost in a drought condition. Everything was hard, rock hard, and the grass was like straw. Well, then 2 days later, my girlfriend was returning from a nearby town about 10:30 at night, and she was coming down a state route, and she was coming downhill, and there's a curve next to another rural road that comes out from, it goes, let me see, from east to west, and it dead ends at the state route. And as she was coming down the hill, there was another car that had come around the curve coming from the south going to the north, and she's going from north to south. And this thing on two legs. She said it actually, and she said it looked like a giant dog standing upright, walking across the road. She goes, it hopped up on the road from a culvert. She said the person from the other direction stopped, hit brakes hard, and was just sitting there watching this thing. And it turned and looked at her and looked back at the other car and walked over and jumped down off of the side of the road. And on the side of the road where it jumped, there's about it goes into the woods. There's probably about a 8 to 10 foot drop off, and it was gone. And she came home. She was white as a ghost, and just, she goes, it was unlike anything I'd ever seen. She goes, it was almost like it was saying, here I am. So that was just, what, a couple months ago.
It was a couple of months ago. No way.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Now my sighting was 2005, and since then I have some friends that are um, Bigfoot researchers, and they came up, spent the evening, and he's like, this is ideal for everything. He goes, there's so many waterways and so much woodland and so much farmland and so many waterways. He goes, this thing could travel back and forth during the day to hunt or at night to hunt and go back to wherever it rests. He goes, it'll never be seen. He goes, there's so much water around here and so much uh, potential,
Farmland.
deer. Oh, there's deer
Yeah.
and, all kind of, wild animals, deer and rabbit and, whatever. So he came up and we had a nice evening and a good discussion about it. But, this was, their sightings were 2 days apart, and it was 2 months ago or 3 months ago, whatever, July.
Mhm.
So this is September. So yeah,
But you're in
a couple
another
months ago.
house now. You're not in the same house any longer.
I'm 100 yards away from the house I lived in at the encounter of 2004
Right.
or five. At 2005, the encounter in December, and the one in that 2006, that January. I'm 100 yards to the north, same side of the road, just different side of the tracks.
Have you seen any evidence that it's been around that house that you're at now?
You know, this side of the tracks, we have a set of woods that, you know, my girlfriend, she's has empathic qualities, and for years the woods directly behind, when I say directly behind, it's probably 250 yards behind our house. There's a couple of empty fields, and in the wood line, and there's a creek, and those things, in the summertime, usually everything's teeming, at nighttime or right before nighttime, it'll be teeming with all kind of noise, birds, frogs, crickets, whatever. Well, they'll go silent. They'll go dead quiet. There's absolutely no noise, nothing. We've been back there, and the feeling you get when you're back there is that something's there. Um, there's other people that I've talked to here in town have gotten the same kind of feeling. They don't like going back by those woods. Something happened there. I don't know what. I've lived this in town my entire life, uh, and I can tell you, even when as a young teenager and walking past those things at night, there's always an eerie feeling.
You live in a
But
really
those
old town, right?
old town, the
Yeah.
town was settled in the
18.
early 1800s. So, and I got a chance to meet Linda Godfrey, and we talked
Oh yeah.
several times. Yep. I got to talk to Renfern and some of the others. And what was interesting is that, one of her theories was, that they were perhaps part of a Indian culture as as guardians. Now, it had a lot to do with cemeteries and old cemeteries. From my home, if you drew a circle, a 4 mile radius circle from my home, there's probably no less than 10 cemeteries. And a lot of them are very old. Yeah. And that's where this thing that night, the more research I've done, I know there was Indian tribes that settled here. I know that we have the Lake Erie tribes that have settled through here, Huron, Lake Erie, Erie Indians, and the Huron Indians. But it was headed toward the cemetery that night that it ran from me, or not from me, but when it ran away from our meeting, it ran 150 yards straight toward where the cemetery is. So I don't know. I know it was corporeal. I watched it breathe. I watched it move. And my youngest son, he was scared to death. He doesn't usually get fazed by much of anything, but this really bothered him
I guess
immensely.
so. I can
Yeah.
imagine. Oh dear. Well, have you thought about putting a camera out around your house?
I have multiple game cameras. Usually they pick up the same old, the areas where I need to put them. It's the areas where I need to put them are the property is owned by different people now, and they tend to be a little, again, rural area. They tend to be a little, what's the word I want? Protective of their property. They don't want stuff up in the trees. They don't want,
Hmm.
they don't want somebody trespassing back there. They don't want to get sued for somebody getting hurt. Um, they don't want to take a chance. People have had bad encounters with hunters where some hunters have, stepped down fences or left, cans back there, things like this. So they're kind of like, nah, we don't want people walking back there anymore.
Well, you don't have to do
So,
that, but you can put these hunting cameras around your house,
right. I have.
pointing out to the woods.
Yeah. Well, if you do that though, then, that far away is not necessarily going to pick anything up unless it comes close enough to
Yeah,
trigger the camera.
yeah, yeah.
So,
I would want to
the
know
stuff,
if they're coming close to my
right.
house.
Right. I've had, like I said, mountain lion right behind the house, and I tracked it for about a month southeast of me. And for about a month, I tracked it to it. I lost its track in a nature preserve. But um, these things are so fast, and the research that I've done, when I say fast, these things have been known to pace cars at 50 miles an hour.
I never heard that.
Okay, so I want you to break that down I've broken that down into yards per second. Okay, so 50 miles per hour is 24.4 yards per second.
Oh
So this
my
thing was staring
God.
at me between 30 and 40 yards away. And, my firearm at the time was up on my arm like this. I wasn't afraid, but how long it would have taken me to drop that rifle to pull the trigger, they say the average person in a tense situation, an emergency situation, let's say you're driving, length of time it takes you to recognize something's there in a tense situation and hit the brakes on your car is a second and a half, 1.5 seconds. Well, if this thing can move 24.4 yards in 1 second, you're really not going to have much time to react. If it wanted to kill me that night, I believe it would have. I think it was just as interested in me as I was in it because I wasn't afraid. Um, Now I've got some ideas on trying to call one in a little bit, um, and prepare for it. There's some different techniques to do that with. And I'm hoping to put that into fruition sooner than later.
Oh, Brian,
Uh,
when this dog man runs, is he running on the 2 feet or does he go down on all fours?
it depends. You know, when that night that I saw it, it was running on 2 feet. I mean,
It
incredibly fast.
was.
When my son saw it, he said it was leaning over, and he said it looked like it was running on four. He said just the way it ran. He said it was so strange. He goes like its front feet were touching and then not touching the ground, like it was leaning forward running. And he goes, but like a giant German Shepherd. My girlfriend saw it on 2 feet, on two legs, bipedal, and it crossed the road. And it jumped up from a culvert right on the road and looked at her, looked at the other car. And she said, even after it crossed the road, as she started to drive, the other car was just sitting there. Like he was having a hard time, or he or she was having a hard time believing what they saw.
Now, has anybody else in your area seen this dog man?
The people around here don't really talk too much about stuff like that.
Really?
It took me a long time to, 20 years nearly for me to actually talk about it. And, getting with the right people and talking to them and hearing their experiences. But most of the people around here, well, there was a gentleman a couple of houses down. He saw something. He said, I'm not sure what it was, but it was massive. And it moved behind his deck. He was looking out his kitchen window. And he goes, it walked past his deck. And he said, by the time I grabbed my rifle, which was by the door, and stepped out, he goes, this thing was gone. He goes, I had never seen anything move so quick in my life. He goes, but it was huge. And he goes, this was like 11 o'clock at night. He goes, I had the back lights on, and he goes, this thing was massive. So there was somebody else that saw something, in the last couple of years. It's
Um,
very interesting account.
Brian, can we take some questions from the viewers? Would you like to do that? Um,
Sure, we can try.
okay, this is from Beat 3 Airspace. Noreen, on the Ohio Research Team website, along with Brian, there is a video of a dog thing digging up a grave. Can you add more about this?
I did see that video too, and I know there was another instance of what they thought was a man in the 1930s was a watchman around like a rectory type thing. He was doing his rounds, and there was a graveyard, and a dog man was digging in this grave. He saw it two different times, and that was, I believe, in the 1930s. So I don't know. From what I've read, there's some say that this is a Native American entity that watches over the land and the burial grounds of chiefs and not just the chiefs but also medicine men of the Native Americans. And I know around here there was a lot of different effigy mounds, and some have been destroyed. People, farmers have, destroyed them, not knowing. There's been some that's been found recently um, at a school not too far from here. So it's hard telling.
Aren't those effigy mounts, though, American Indian?
Yes, that's what I was saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
an
Uh,
American Indian is, again, they're um, it's the one thought that Linda Godfrey had was that they were something that one of her theories was that it was something that had been, um, for lack of better words, conjured by medicine men to watch over the graves in the land of the chiefs and the Native American lands.
Okay,
So
now viewers, a a dog. I did some research. A dog man doesn't change.
no, it does
There,
not.
it doesn't change its image, but a skinwalker does, and there's a couple of other cryptids that change their image, but a dogman doesn't change. Also, a dogman doesn't have they don't produce curses, but skinwalkers they produce curses. That's what I read anyway. And okay,
Right.
so Sandra, oh gosh, I lost this. Hold on, let me go up a little. Yeah. Sandra says, "What the hell? What the hell they are, and why are they here, and where are they from? What do you think?
What the hell they are is just
And why are they
you know
here?"
they are malevolent. There's been some there's been some speculation that they're dimensional, that they can move from one dimension into another, and they're actually an interdimensional creature, perhaps. I know the one that I saw was corporeal, and something that's corporeal has to eat. Um, I don't know. I wish I knew what it is. It's just all speculation. Um,
Well,
if
also,
I if I end up calling one in to where I can, it's malevolent. I've never heard the encounters that I've had with it, and my girlfriend had just a couple months ago. It was a sense of evil. It wasn't anything benevolent about it. It was malevolent. Um,
well, they've been
so
here.
we'll go from there.
Like I said, they've been here since the 1800s.
I'm
Um,
sure before that,
well, that's the first sighting was from the
right?
1887. Yeah, the first sighting. Yeah, you're probably right. I'm sure. So Renee McDowell, my mod, she wants to know, do they see UFO activity before a sighting of these dogman?
I didn't. I did not. My my son did not. I don't believe my girlfriend did, but I know that I didn't. The only thing I heard was that what woke me was that chain thunking from the dog, and then the howl. Now there is on YouTube. Um, it's called an unknown howl. I think it's in the Canadian uh, forest. I could probably send you the link. Um, and this once I heard that, it was almost a dead match for what I heard, and it was unknown, something unknown howling. It's incredible to listen to this thing. It's eerie.
You know, they not too many people put out the sound either of Bigfoot. I have heard Bigfoot sound, and nobody seems to be producing that. Now, another thing is, and beat free space, airspace. I also believe that I think that all of these cryptids are interdimensional. They have never found any bodies. There's no left behinds. So I believe they're all interdimensional. What do you think, Brian?
You know, with Bigfoot, you have to. Here's a species um, that have learned. They go back hundreds of years and learned how to stay away from humans. You know, it just. I mean, animals die in the woods all the time, and you never find their carcasses. They're, they've done research showing, they thought it would take, a month for a deer carcass to be reduced to bone, and it actually only took less than a week. So who's to say that the Bigfoot are just, perhaps they bury, maybe they bury their their um their kind, or like I said, you don't, a bear dies in the woods. You don't. find bears or
No, that's
deers all the
true.
time.
That's
You know,
true.
you don't always find the carcasses of things that have died, especially when something's trying to stay away from people. So, you know, it's hard to say. You know, the dogman, I don't know. It's something like um, it is something of nightmares to think that it could move in and out of a dimension. It's possible, or I don't know. It's it's still intriguing trying to figure that out.
My God, Brian, there's so many cryptids out there. I mean, the fly. I did 3 shows with Linda Godfrey, and let's see, air, land, and by sea, and then the flying cryptids. I mean, there, I have never heard of a body being found of one of those flying cryptids. Never.
No,
I hold my stance on this. I truly believe these things are interdimensional. I truly believe that.
you
Okay,
know, me and my son-in-law and myself and my oldest son, the Marine, former Marine, we went down to Point Pleasant, and he has a they have a place not too far from the TNT factory down there, and we
uh-huh.
spent 3 days walking back through there, and it was an interesting time. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Looking for the Mothman.
Oh yeah. I've done several shows on the Mothman. Okay, and we have another question from Tall Cross. He is from Scotland. He's saying, do you, Brian, do you have Nordic Celtic ancestry? He's asking because of your shirt.
Well, um, my daughter did the again the what is it, 21 and Me or something like that. We have some Swedish in there and German and European. And as far as other Nordic, I don't know how far it went back or how much she dug up, but it's quite possible.
Oh, okay. um, is there anything else you want to share about your story? Why didn't you
You
write a
know,
book? Why didn't you write a book?
uh, there's enough books out there. There's a lot of good reading out there. Um, I,
Also,
I
when you said that,
I like passing. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh, no, no, go ahead, Brian, go ahead.
I like mine just to be a fireside story. You know,
Yeah, well, I hope people start asking you to come on their show with your story. Now, you said that the Dogman was getting your scent, but I think at the same time that scent was bringing him, whether there was a sense of fear in you. But I know you weren't afraid. You weren't really afraid when you were encountered with the Dogman.
no, no, I wasn't afraid, and maybe that's what was he was intrigued by. You know, most people that see something like that, there's a sense of fear, and I want to say that I believe they feed off fear. You know, there was a recent there was another Seth Badlove show on it was a dogman of the LBL beasts, and there was a one of his guests said the same thing. He felt that they feed off that. The more they can make you fear, the more they
Mhm.
can feed. And I wasn't afraid, so there was no time to be afraid. I'm looking at something that shouldn't exist, but I'm like, you know, it's kind of like,
It
death
startled.
smiles at us all. Well, death
Well, it
smiles at us all.
startled
All we can
you.
do is smile back. You know,
Oh my God.
it is what
This,
it is.
yeah, I mean, this thing appears and you're looking at it and you can't believe what you're seeing. And it's kind of like
Oh,
you kind of like you kind of like freeze, like, oh my God, what am I looking at? And you don't even think. I don't think you think like trying to communicate with it, say, hi, you know, I'm
yeah, no,
Brian,
yeah, no, I'm not
you know.
yeah, no, I'm not going to say hi. I'm not going to try to shake its hand. I'm not going to say, here, puppy, here, boy. No, I'm good.
No, it's just
I did chase a mountain lion down a large hill, yelling, "Here, kitty, kitty!" And So, I don't think I'll go here, boy. But the mountain lion thought it was cool. He stopped for a minute and turned around and looked at me and just kind of cocked his head, was
Oh,
flicking his tail. I got within about 5 yards of him.
wow, that's interesting. So he stopped. Wow.
He did. He was running downhill. I was chasing him. We happened to be on four wheelers, and I stopped and got off and chased him down this hill. And I said, "Here, kitty, 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 here, kitty, kitty, kitty." And he jumped over this large tree that was on the side of the hill. I had to go under the tree. He went over the tree, and he stopped and turned around to look at me. And I think it was probably just out of curiosity of thinking, what fool is chasing me, yelling, "Here, kitty, kitty." And
Yeah.
he cocked his head. He was flicking his tail like a cat. He turned around and took off running.
Oh my God, that's like
So, but I'm not going to do that to Dogman. I'm not going to go, "Here, boy." No, I'm good.
So the next time, do you think that you'll probably encounter him again? Do you think he'll show up since your son has seen him?
You know, I think that he will show up. Um, I think that I think it's almost an inevitability, honestly, um, for him and I to meet again. Um, like I said, I talked to a couple of my friends from Southern Ohio that are Bigfoot researchers, and I told them my idea and how I wanted to try to call one in. He thought it was a good idea as far as my plan. If I can execute it correctly, I might be okay. But you know, this thing is, again, like nothing I had ever experienced. It's it's it is evil. I mean, I that's the sense I got from it. That's um. So I think he and I will meet again, or
Have
it.
you?
You see it? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Do you be prepared? I hope next time. I think you
Oh
will.
yeah, I am.
Have
Yeah,
you
that's.
have you talked to other people who have encountered Dogman?
I've talked to a few,
And
and the
you
same thing.
exchange.
They said the same thing. They were, it's so fast that they were no they the ones I talked to, their biggest thing was fear. I mean, just fear, and again, it was something that they couldn't comprehend, and to just get away as quickly as possible. Um, if this thing wants to catch you, it will. Again, I think if it chases you and it allows you to continue to get away, I think it's feeding off your fear.
So with the other people that you've talked about with Bigfoot, I mean, Dogman, um, what was their encounter like? Were they also afraid? Did they fear for their life? Was it aggressive at
Yes.
all?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They were afraid. That's what I said. They were afraid, and their whole idea was just to get away as quickly as possible. And when they came across it, when they saw it, when it showed itself to them, um, it was fear, terror,
But was
and
it
again, the same
aggressive?
kind of, like, as far as being aggressive, as far as chasing. That's what I said. The one that it did, it just, if it wanted to catch you, it will. I believe that. I believe that if it wants to catch you, it will, because of its sheer speed. But it's kind of like playing cat and mouse, because if it can make you, I believe that it feeds off your fear. If it can make you afraid, it just makes it grow stronger. If that makes sense. Um, it gets more pleasure out of like that cat and mouse game.
Hmm.
It's not anything that, again, it's It's a perfect hunter. I mean, these things are so fast, and when it had its hands up on the branch, I could see they weren't like dog paws. They were like hands, and you could see the claws.
Oh
They,
yeah.
they were massive, and its
Mm.
teeth were massive. It's a perfect hunter. I believe that. So you can only say that this thing is, if it wanted to kill you, it would.
I had read that they really don't want to hurt you, and they're really not aggressive. There were a couple of cases where they did kill an animal, I guess, or they did harm some people, but on the whole, they're really not aggressive. And
You know,
because with them just standing there and staring at you, which I read you're not supposed to stare back, um, that's really, I think that's as far as it goes. I don't think they would really attack you.
well, there's a story out of upper state New York near the Adirondacks. A man that owns, 80 acres or so up there had an encounter, and his encounter was not pleasant. And he was with somebody else in a side by side. This thing attacked them. One of them got a shot off and hit it. It didn't phase it, and it had killed, you know, deer, and had hurted his cow. But this thing this thing was aggressive. This thing was trying to get them,
Hmm.
and it was massive. And they were in a side by side, and they were traveling quite rapidly, trying to get out of the woods, and it was pacing them, and it was aggressive. So
Hmm.
there's
Same.
there's been other ones that have been aggressive as well that I've heard. So I can't say that they're not aggressive.
Well,
Um,
I would assume that they aren't getting all the information that people have to share because they all they can put on the web is what information they get. And so if
right.
they are doing this, too bad there wasn't a website where somebody takes information and logs these encounters and the situations that occur so we all know about them, and I don't
You know,
think there is.
I started working on a large state map. Part of my research. It's very large. I have gone back and found the encounters here in Ohio, which there are many, latitude, longitude. I've put on this map ley lines, spiritual ley lines, and I put on there the electromagnetic ley lines, north south ley lines, and how things um, are coordinating with these ley lines, north south, electromagnetic, and the spiritual ley lines that run through the state of Ohio, as well as there are, I'm trying to remember the parts of my research, there is 400 known cave systems, caves in Ohio, but only 16 of them are um, actually open to the public. The rest are on private land. So hiding places. I'm trying to go along. And what was interesting is the a lot of the I have latitude and longitude of multiple sightings. I want to say 16 or 18, and they all fall between two spiritual ley lines. Most of them, not all of them, but most of them fall in between the two spiritual ley lines. It was very interesting. Um, Trying to get boots on the ground to go take a look at that. So, but with the research I'm doing, I'm putting together um, these sightings and trying to map them out: when, where, time of year, time of day, um, full moon, new moon,
Mm, yeah.
quarter moon, whatever the case may be. Trying to get all that information in one spot.
Yeah, they need to have something like that. I have another question for you from Tall Cross. He wants to know, what do you think its purpose is and why would they be here?
I don't know. Again, Linda Godfrey. I mentioned her several times. I There's other uh, Native American tales, of course, that believe that perhaps they were, um, again, for a better word, conjured to watch over Native American land and the resting places of perhaps the chiefs and the medicine men. That's one theory. One theory is they move in between dimensions, and why they're here, they have to eat, you know. Um, so that's why they hunt, and I believe that's what they do. It's hunt. But why they're here, again, it's just all speculation because we just don't know.
Yeah. Well, the same thing with all the other creatures. Bigfoot. They have more information on Bigfoot, I think, than any other creature.
Then on the
Uh,
Dogman, they do.
no, they're not
They
a
are,
dog man.
yeah. They say there are 7 different types of dogmen. So they wonder if some of the uh, aggressive Bigfoots may have been actually dog,
But
or
Bigfoot don't
again,
but Bigfoot don't use their they don't they don't use all four limbs. They're strictly a 2 footer, two legs.
oh no, oh
I've
no,
never heard of it.
one of my friends is a Bigfoot researcher. Actually witnessed one running on all fours uphill,
That sounds like a
and
gorilla.
he got and
Are
he
you
got
sh
he got tracks. He got tracks of this thing, massive tracks. They were 18 inches, and that was in southern Ohio. That he saw it run on all fours uphill.
Hmm. I've never heard of that ever, that they use all fours.
Once we end this podcast, I can give you his name if you want to call and talk to him. But he might be one to listen to as well.
Oh, okay. Is he on Facebook?
He is.
Oh, okay. He says send me his name and I'll contact him. I'd like
Okay.
to know more. I've done several Bigfoot shows, but I'm up for more. Um, Gee, Brian, is there anything else you want to add to your story? It's very interesting, and I hope you do get to see him again, and more, because you need to document this. It's really important.
You know, it's something that you think about all the time. Again, living in the same town, I live 100 yards from where the other house was. Um, and when I say rural, like I said, it's very rural. There's trees, and I mean there's forests and streams and woods, and there's a state park 5 miles from my house. And to have that, to have to think, when you think about that, it creeps into your thoughts when you're out taking a walk, when you're out camping. I do a lot of hiking and camping, and again, when the woods go silent, listening to um, your heart start racing a little bit. My my oldest son and I was trying to do some research on some of the new some predators that have come back to Ohio, and we were not too far from Mohican Woods, and we had set out a bait and we set up some game cams, and we were there when we were setting up the cameras and setting out the bait. There was absolutely no noise except him and I standing in those woods. A mile up the road, it was full of life. I mean, it was birds and this was early spring. There was birds and crickets and frogs, and it was just going crazy. But when we got to where we were at, there was absolutely no sound. When we went back the next day to pick up the camera, on our way up, we had walked a little different trail. We ended up walking into only thing that could be described it as a feeding ground. There were 7 dead deer within 5 yards that had been stripped down, and eaten. They were carcasses. The fur had been ripped off. Some of the fur, some of the hide was laying in bushes, and legs were ripped off. This was all there were 7 within a 5-yard circle from where we were standing. And that was the same area that, like I said, was all nice and quiet, no noise. When that happens, there's a predator bigger than you. There's an apex predator in the woods, and something did that. Like I said, there was skeletal remains. Again, 7 deer within 5 yards.
Hey.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
No. Go ahead. I just want to tell you something. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's just, it's something to think about when you're in the woods. And when you've had encounters like this, it makes you think.
Okay, so back in 2012, I aired a show with this guy. He died. He had cancer. He was young, and he died. He had cancer, and anyway, he had mental issues, and he used to go to visit his grandmother, and his grandmother lived in the woods, and he wanted to end his life. And so he was sitting out there in the woods, and I guess he was crying, and I guess he was talking out loud and wanted help or whatever. And a Bigfoot came to him, and it was telepathy. He was communicating. I don't know. Don't laugh. I swear to God, I believe this guy. He was telepathy, and he said that this Bigfoot would communicate with him, and it was a female. And this Bigfoot really helped him mentally, and uh, I don't know if I can find that recording or not, but um, I may be able to, because if the Bigfoot gave him messages, and so every time he would go to his grandmother's and he would go out in the woods, and all he had to do was talk and conjure up the Bigfoot, and she would come and talk to him. So I'm wondering if you could conjure up, if you want to, mentally think about this Dogman and conjure him up to come visit you. Would you
I'm
try
not sure it works
that?
like I'm not sure it works quite like that, but I will say this. I'm sure you've probably heard of, there's other ways I think I would rather try to call it up other than using my mind.
What would be?
Last thing I want is a dog man in my head. That's really okay. Um, that's not a good place to be. But I know you probably heard of John E.L. Tenney, correct?
Say that
You know
again?
John?
John
Do you know?
Tenney?
Yeah, John Tenney.
I
Do
know
you
the
know him?
name. I know the name.
Yeah, he's a paranormal investigator. He's
Yes,
done a lot
yes.
of different things. He was on multiple TV shows. I got to meet him in 2000. It was either 2006 or 2007. They had the first annual, I think it's only been one, Dogman conference in Defiance, Ohio, because there was the Dogman sighting in Defiance back in 1972-ish. Anyway, John Tenney told a story of him going over to his, he was in, I believe it was Michigan, and not too far from his parents' place, and he drove to his parents' place, and they told him a story about a friend that he knew that had been in the woods, and the man was deer hunting, and he saw across the field what he thought was somebody that had shot a coyote and hung in a tree,
Mm.
and or a wolf, a coyote or a wolf. And anyway, he walked over there, and as he's getting closer, he got to within, I don't know how many yards of this thing, and he said he saw it. It wasn't hanging in the tree; it was standing. And he's looking at this thing, and this thing turns its head and looks down at him. Now, John went and talked to him, and he went out in the woods where the location was, and he found some hair and sent it off to be analyzed, and it came back inconclusive.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, you might want to talk to John Tenney on that one. I know when I was at that conference, it was a very interesting conference. He
Yeah,
told that story. Um, so these things are quite prolific, I guess.
wow, the story. Well, Brian, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
It's extremely interesting, and you know what? Keep me informed if you, um, if you have any more information and things are happening. Let us know. I'd love to have you come back and talk about it.
Oh yeah, I'll keep you updated.
Okay.
Said no dogmen in the head. We're not doing that. We're sorry.
Okay.
No mental telepathy on that one. We're good.
All
It's been
right.
nice. Thank you, Pat, on your show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us. Best wishes to you, and I hope things really, really go well on this because it's very interesting, and we need more information on Dogman. Definitely. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and you have a good night.
Too. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Good night. Oh, great. I hope you enjoyed the show. Um, oh gosh, I wanted to show you something. Uh, okay. Thanks everybody for being here. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the show. Um, I love stories. I love the stories on these cryptids. Um, Listen, I know Christopher was in Chris was in the show earlier. And so, okay, so let me tell you. So on the 26th, Dave Spinks is coming back. He's writing a new book, and it's on folklore and legends of Point Pleasant. I haven't heard about the book coming out yet, but I think it should be coming out. Um, because that's why he wanted to do a show on the 26th, so I'll have to get a hold of him. Also, I had told you about this. Keith McCloskey, he's from England, and we're doing a special show on Sunday, uh, September 29th, because of the time change, the difference in our time's like 8 hours. Um, aired a show with Keith on the Day at Love Pass. I've done several shows, but one of the shows I did with him was Day at Love Pass, and it's an excellent show. He actually went to Russia, and they let him get into their logs and documents that they had, and he wrote a book on it. And so we aired a show, and it's really good. It's in the archives on my channel. Also, so on the 29th with Keith, I can't wait. Well, actually, I'm going to do two shows. One on lighthouses, and this one, let's see, does it show? Oh, that not that. Uh, this unsolved aviation mysteries, 5C tales, and this is what it's on. Okay, hold on. It's a conspiracy. Its theories of sabotage, murder, and even UFOs flourish around the greatest unsolved mysteries of aviation from the 20th century. This account of the most intriguing loose ends from aeronautical history provides the known details of 5 great mysteries and the best and the most colorful attempts to explain what might have happened. Planes disappearing out in the sky, shady dealings from Sri Lanka, uh, businessmen plummeting to their death, even the Kennedy family, all are featured in this gripping open case. Having previously written about the Dateline Pass incident and cast his detailed origin eye over many other aviation mishaps. So I'm really excited about airing this show. He's going to talk about the Kennedy, um, you know, Kennedy, John F. K. Jr., his airplane crash. So that's going to be a great show, and that's on the 29th. Um, okay, and so October 10th, Jen is coming back. We're going to do several cases on unsolved cases. Um, There's a couple I would really love to know about the Valeska axe murders. There's a couple other ones I really the Beaumont kids, the 3 children that disappeared. They went to the seashore and they disappeared. The Sauter children, I think there was 8 children. There was a fire in their house, um, and the parents were scrambling and telling the kids to get out of the house. All 8 of the kids disappeared. So, oh, I didn't think about October. Should I do something for October? I guess I should, huh? Um, on the 24th, Steve Stockton's coming back, and we're gonna do a show on death celebrities, celebrity deaths. Okay, so that's it. Hey, you guys, have a great weekend. I hope you enjoyed the show. I really enjoyed Brian. I've never talked to him before. And I guess that's it. So I have to think about. Hey, Renee, what should I do for Halloween? What would you like Jen to do for Halloween? Got to think of something scary, huh? That would be good. I have to. Jen will always come back, so I can always do those other. I have so many cases I want to talk to her about. All right, so guys, I'm gonna go. Have a great weekend. Be safe out there. Like I said, I hope you enjoyed the show, and thank you for submitting your questions. I haven't done that for a while. I guess maybe I should start doing questions, huh? If we have time for them. So I love you guys. Big hugs to you. Thank you, chat room. You guys are all wonderful. And thank you to my mods, Chip, Terry, and Renee. I love you both so much. And my awesome friend, my buddy from Tallcross from Scotland, who is always here. Come rain or come shine, no matter what time, he's always here. Thank you, Tallcross. And you guys, I love you. Know that very much. And Sylvester Staten, we've been here. We've been here since last year. Um, I don't know, I don't know what to tell you guys that don't know about the shows. All I can say is go to my page, go to my front page on YouTube here. All you have to do is click my thing, Paranormal Zone TV. It'll bring you to the front page, and there's a little bell icon, or it says remind me of the show. So if you click on that, you'll get a reminder. I used to send out emails on my website, but everybody left that email list, so I can't send them out. I have to have at least 50 people to sign up in order to send out email reminders. And you could always go there, but I have to have 50 people. You can go to ParanormalZone.tv, and there's a link on off to the side about I don't know, I think show reminders or something. You can sign up for it. When I get 50 people, I can send out reminders. So, everybody, I'm going to go now. And I thank you again so much for being here. I love you guys. And have a great weekend, okay? Thank you. Love you. Good night.